Alright, welcome back. Now in today's video, we're going to go through the 2020 P6 Mid-Year Review paper from Yunus Primary School. Now if you are my student, make sure you have your practice paper with you so you're able to take down the notes as you go through the corrections. Or if you're my students and you're watching this again, well, it will be still good to have your practice paper with you to follow along. If you're not my students, welcome to my channel, and I hope that you will still benefit from this. Do pause the video when you see the question, attempt it first, and then review the answer after that. Let's get started. Which of the following characteristics is or are found only in mammals but not in other animals? Only. They give birth to their young alive. Yes, this is what we learned about mammals in school. They need air, food, and water to survive. Well, all living things need this. It's not just only in mammals. The females produce milk for their young to suckle. That's true. So I would think that A and C would be the answer. However, I do not see that choice in the MCQ here. Now, in cases like this, when it happens, I may just raise my hand and ask the teacher, right? Or I think a bit deeper, right? Because there is an answer from this. Now, some of you may know this science tidbit that there are animals that are not mammals, very few exceptions, like guppies for instance, that give birth to their young alive instead of laying eggs. Guppies is a kind of fish, right? And they can actually give birth to their young alive. Therefore, it's not only in mammals. Now, if you are my student, I'll actually mark you right if you give your answer as A only or C only. Alright, because personally I think the answer should be A and C. However, factually speaking, if you talk about only in mammals, there are animals that are like guppies that do not lay eggs, but they give birth to the young alive. So the answer for this question is number 2, C only. Now, why are they called mammals? Because mammals have this mammalian gland that allows them to give out milk, so the young can suckle on the milk. Now, technically speaking, in school exams or in PSLE, such a question will not be tested because in PSLE, because you're not required to memorize the specific details of animals or plants. You're supposed to understand the general characteristics, like mammals give birth to young alive, mammals feed their young with milk, mammals are covered with hair on their body. Those are characteristics of mammals. They're distinguishing characteristics. Just like birds have beaks, right? Fish have scales. Amphibians breathe through their moist skin when they're in water and breathe through their lungs when they're on land. So these are specific characteristics. Now, but in this case, your answer is 2. Right, let's move on. Now, study the 2 cells below. Which of the following gives the correct classification of the cells and the function of part X? So, must be very careful. So, we talk about cells, right? The way I try to remember the difference between cell wall and cell membrane is to look at the think of clothes on my skin. Clothes give me protection. Clothes are on the outer layer. Clothes is like the cell wall. So, whereas my skin will be the cell membrane. This is the inner, this is the outer. This part will be the cell wall, and this will be the cell membrane. So this is also the cell membrane, and cell membrane control the movement of substances in and out of the cell. Act as a bodyguard that stops something from going through and allows something to go through. So I'll be looking at control movement of substances. These will be 2 possible options. That's the function of X. So animal A, so animal cell is A because it has no cell wall. This is a plant cell because there's a cell wall. So answer is 2 for this. Question 3. Which of the following statement is or are correct? When we are at rest, our heart stops pumping blood for a while. That is false. If this happens, we will all die, right? When we're sleeping, our heart pumps blood slower than when we are awake. This is true because we are less active and we are less energetic when we are at rest. So everything goes slow to conserve energy. When we're exercising, our heart pumps blood at a faster rate to different parts of the body. Why? Because they need to send more oxygen to all parts of the body, and they need to remove the carbon dioxide that are produced by the different cells in all parts of the body. This is definitely true. So the answer will be B and C, and the answer is 3 for this. Next one. Right, remember to pause the video and try it out first if you are new to my channel and you're not my student. Around set up an experiment as shown in the diagram below. He released the wooden block from the top of the ramp. Now, so what happened here? So he released it, right? So it slides down. So what forces act on this? So definitely there is a gravitational force that pulls down on the object, and there is also frictional force that goes against the direction of motion. Because if it talks about it is moving down, means actually having a motion, downward motion. And the frictional force will be in acting in the opposite direction to the direction of motion. And this is a gravitational force. So there are two forces acting on this, frictional force and gravitational force. Answer is 4 for this. Let's go on. This question. There are stages in the reproduction of a flowering plant shown below. Now, if you were to draw this out, actually this is not cycles, this is a linear fashion. But I think for the purpose of representing these options in a test paper is easier. But typically, we talk about flowering plants, right? There will be a, let's say we start with dispersal. If there's dispersal first, after seeds are dispersed, they land on the ground, they need to germinate before they can grow. After they germinate, they grow into a young plant, to adult plant with flowers. Then what will happen? You will have your pollination when there are flowers. If pollination is successful, the flowers will be fertilized. That is a fusing of the male and the female reproductive cell. The pollen grains and the ovules fuses, alright, and then the ovary will swell to become a fruit. The ovules become seeds, and then you will have your fruit that will be dispersed. So let's take a look. So dispersal here would be A. Then germination is B. Pollination is E. Fertilization is C. And then you have a D first. The ovary develops into a fruit. So as you see, this is A, B, E, C, D. A, B, E, C, D. Alright, option 2 is the best answer here. Let's go to question 6. Now, Jane selected 3 identical seeds P, Q, and R from plant Z and placed them under the conditions as shown in the table below. Now, you're talking about seeds in certain condition, you're talking most likely about germination. And for germination, it requires oxygen, and definitely requires water, and it requires suitable temperature. Your teacher might have also taught you about warmth. Alright, the more accurate way of saying it is actually suitable temperature, because different kind of seeds can germinate at different temperatures. Some could be low, right, quite low. So let's take a look. And seeds do not need light to germinate. So this one actually is not necessary. This is there as a distractor to distract you. So we definitely need water. Now air will contain oxygen inside, so definitely it's all needed. And the temperature that is a bit high, so this too is quite warm. It appears that P and Q, these seeds can germinate, and they're the same kind of seeds because they're from the same plant. So I think P and Q can germinate. Sorry, P and R, I said wrong, misspoke. P and R can germinate. So answer is 3 for this. There's no need for light. So if you have chosen answer R only as your answer, means that you have the misconception thinking that light is needed for germination. Light is not needed. Light is needed only when a plant has moved past the germination stage, has already developed its own leaves, and then it requires light to make food. Let's move to question 7. Now, CT wants to find out how overcrowding affects the growth of plants. So overcrowding, right, will affect because then the germinating seeds and the growing plants will be competing for 3 things. What are the 3 things they're competing for? They're competing for water. They're competing for light. They're competing for minerals. Now, those in my class will learn this thing called LMW. Think of BMW, but mine is LMW. So light, minerals, water. And how else can you remember this? Think of a plant, alright, with leaves and roots. What will the roots be absorbing? minerals, and water. What will the leaves be capturing? Light. If there are many plants growing nearby, alright, then there will be many plants with many roots that are competing for water and minerals. And the leaves from the surrounding plants may cover or overshadow this particular plant, and that will stop it from getting enough light to make food. Now, your teacher might also have taught you about this idea called space. Now, space is not necessary for it's not one of the conditions that affect growth of plants. So if you have been learning space, I think nobody will mark you wrong if you write space, but space is something that if I were to mark your work, I will ignore this answer altogether. Because seeds are not human beings. They have no concept of, I need more personal space. Seeds are just seeds. They are looking for enough light, enough water, enough minerals so they can grow well. Right? Let's move on. Sorry, not just seeds, plants itself. So water, alright, here. So which two steps should she use to conduct a fair test? And let's look at the aim here. Sorry, I digress a little bit in revising this part. So to find out, they're talking about the aim of the experiment. The aim is about overcrowding. So overcrowding, definitely I must have some with fewer plants, some with more plants. Definitely I must use J in one of my answer, because this is the only one with the few plants, 5. And I must then look at either J and K, J and L, or J and M. So by doing this, I know that these two options are definitely out because there's no J there. Now, if I compare to K or to L, now K would have same amount of water, alright, but it's a different kind of plant. L, same amount of water, same kind of plant. So then if I compare with L, then there's only one change variable, which is the number of plants. And that's what we want, right? Overcrowding means comparing different number of plants to see if there are more plants that will cause overcrowding. So answer for this will be comparing J and L, and that's answer 2 for question 7. If you choose number 1, that's wrong because you have a different kind of plant. You are talking about K, and different plants may absorb the different amount of water. So even there's overcrowding, they may not mind because they don't need so much water. Let's go to question 8. The diagram shows the flow of blood through our body. So blood samples here. A very typical diagram, heart. Usually you will see body, rest of the body, but of course in this case is leg, and here is lungs. So what's taken in the lungs? Oxygen is taken in to the lungs. Alright, so this is oxygen rich. Arrow R means rich. So the heart will pump the oxygen rich blood out. So I have 2 arrows here because it's very rich here. The heart will use some of the oxygen as it flows through, but it's still very rich. As a body, leg, arms, torso, head, whatever uses the oxygen rich blood, the oxygen in the oxygen rich blood, it will then become oxygen poor. Alright, by the time it goes to the heart will use even more oxygen, it will have even poorer oxygen, and that's when it will need to take in more oxygen here. Now conversely, the fresh air you breathe in has some carbon dioxide. Alright, but it's not very high amount of carbon dioxide. And when you, as the blood goes through the heart, the amount of carbon dioxide will increase. Okay? And it go through the leg, it will increase some more. Because in the process of respiration, oxygen is taken in by the cells and carbon dioxide is removed. And by the time it goes through the heart and goes to the lungs, the carbon dioxide level is really high, and so you expel the CO2 that you do not want, and you will take in the O2 that you want. So blood samples PQR are taken from different parts of the blood vessels as shown below. Which of the following graph best represent the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood samples? So we talk about carbon dioxide, because here we talk about carbon dioxide. So we ignore the oxygen part, we look at the carbon dioxide. So which part should have the highest amount of carbon dioxide? R should have the highest amount of carbon dioxide. P should be the lowest. Okay? So this blood vessel here just came from the heart, which just came from the lungs, which just took in freshly breathed in air. So P should be lowest, R is the highest. P is lowest, there. R is highest. Q is in between. So answer for question 8 is 4. So that's how you understand which is the correct answer, by looking at the relationship here, understanding the changes in the concentration of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide level. Next one, Wilson wrote 4 statements below in his science journal about the reproduction of humans and plants. Oftentimes, let's compare these two reproduction and talk about the male reproductive cell, similarities between the female reproductive cell, and what are some differences. So ovules become seeds. This will occur in the plant. These are produced in the testes. This will be the male cell. This will be the sperms. Adult pass the characteristics of the young. This is about the hereditary trait. During fertilization, male cells fuse with the female cell. All these are true. Alright, so this will be for human. This is for plants and human. This will be for humans. This is for plants only. So for humans, right? Humans, I'll be looking at B and looking at C and D. Okay, A cannot be. A is for plants, seeds. There's no seeds in human beings. So this is definitely wrong. Right? So by looking at this, we already got the answer. Answer is 3. Don't even need to look at this part. But just to be very sure. So for plants will be A. Plants will be C. Alright. And how about D? D is true. Sorry, D is also true. This male reproductive cell can be for plants also. That will be the pollen grains. And the female reproductive cell will be found inside the ovule. This is also true for plants. Okay, I overlooked this part earlier. So this is also true. So answer is 3 for question 9. Question 10. Bala conducted an experiment on photosynthesis in a dark room using the setup shown below. He counted the number of bubbles produced by the water plant in the test tube after a period of time. Let's recap the formula for photosynthesis. Alright, I hope you can pause the video here. Think through the formula in your head first before you play the video. So for photosynthesis to occur, there must be light. There's no light, there's no photosynthesis. And there must be chlorophyll to trap the light. If there's no chlorophyll, there's also no photosynthesis. You need to have water and carbon dioxide. So combining these 4 ingredients, you will be able to get your food that you need. Sometimes they will write it down, food as sugar or glucose, and you give out the life-giving oxygen that all living beings require. So this whole thing is a process of photosynthesis. Why do we need to know this? When we talk about the number of bubbles produced by the water plant, then we know these are oxygen bubbles if there is light here. So you see there's light, there's water, right? Water is transparent, so light can pass through and reach the water plant. So Bala repeated the experiment by increasing variable x. Now what is variable x? We're not sure. We need to find out what is variable x. And keeping all other variables the same. Now these variables must be either amount of carbon dioxide, amount of water, amount of light, or amount of chlorophyll. Because these are the 4 variables that goes in that affects the amount of oxygen being produced. What is being measured here? Number of bubbles. So in other words, the oxygen is the measured variable here, the amount of oxygen or number of oxygen bubbles. So the variables here that are being changed will be one of these. So which one did he change? Let's try to understand. He did an experiment in a dark room. Okay. He repeated the experiment and keeping all other variables the same. And notice that if you change a variable, the amount of oxygen level decreases, which means the rate of photosynthesis decreases as you increase variable x. So what could it be? Let's take a look. If you increase water plants, that means that increasing the number of plants that can actually go through photosynthesis, there will be more oxygen bubbles, more photosynthesis, so this cannot be the answer. Increase the clarity of water. If the water is clearer, means more light can pass through. More light can pass through, there will be more photosynthesis happening, more oxygen bubbles, not decreasing. So this is again wrong. Distance between the water plant and the lamp. As the distance increases, if I move the lamp backward, then the light intensity actually will decrease. The light intensity will decrease if you increase the distance. If there's less light, then the rate of photosynthesis will decrease and there will be fewer oxygen bubbles being produced. Therefore, this is possible. Last one, amount of carbon dioxide present. If you increase the amount of carbon dioxide, what will happen? Increase carbon dioxide, we are increasing the rate of photosynthesis if everything else remains the same. Alright, so this can't be the answer. Answer for question 10 is 3. Hanging there, we do 4 more questions before I take a break. Question 11. The following shows 2 islands, P and Q, surrounded by water. And in 2018, there were some plants growing on island P, but not on island Q. This is a replica of a former PSLE question on seed dispersal. Now, the table shows the characteristics of the plants growing on island P. Okay, island P. In 2018, there were plants growing on island P, but not on island Q, and there's water stopping them from going over. We're not sure how wide is this water body, but there is something that's probably prevents animals from swimming over or something. The table shows the characteristics of the plant growing on this. Some of them, there are 4 kinds of plants growing on island P. Some have wing-like structure. Okay, they can be dispersed by wind. Fibrous husks can be dispersed by water, can trap air and float. Hard, dry outer covering with splits. This is by explosive action or by splitting. So this can't be dispersing too far away. This is fleshy and juicy, is small. This is dispersed by animals. Animals will eat and then throw the seeds away or pass it out through their droppings. And then this again cannot be too far unless animal can swim across the water. Now in 2020, plants were found only in the central region of island Q, which means it's at the center. What does center means? Let's say if X here, fibrous husk, okay, if there's an X here, a plant X here, and the seed dispersed by water, it will land in the coastal area only. It will not travel to the central part, right? The seed won't float on water, then roll onto the center portion. So it cannot be X. So anything with X is wrong. So X will be wrong. Then, what else could be possible on the center of island Q? That must be dispersed by wind. Wind can blow it away, right? Any arrow that show wind direction? Nothing. So I think W definitely is possible. W is possible. How about Z? Juicy with small seeds. Juicy with small seeds. So if the animal can swim, that's possible. There's no mention that animals cannot swim here. So that's possible for question 11 to be by animals. Now, is it by why is it possible? As mentioned earlier on, explosive action is like it is a parent plant, alright, and it's dispersing the seeds around the parent plant. It cannot be too far away, maybe a few meters, that's about it. It can't like shoot all the way across a body of water to the center of the island. It's like shooting bullets, can't be shooting that far away. So question 11, our answer is 2, dispersed by wind, can blow it over from P to Q, can be by animals. Animals eat, then swim across, and then it could be here. Next one, question 12. Jerome placed a pot of plant in the dark for 3 days to remove any starch present in the leaves. Leaf B was then wrapped in plastic bag containing liquid R as shown. So this kind is a photosynthesis question, again something similar in the past, PSLE. And this plastic bag looks like it is transparent, so that can pass through. Remember the formula for photosynthesis? Carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light, and chlorophyll gives you your oxygen plus your food. So if this liquid R absorbs carbon dioxide, that means that your rate of photosynthesis is being affected for this leaf. So if you can absorb all the carbon dioxide, then there will be no photosynthesis happening here. So there's only respiration. You can take in oxygen, but you cannot give out oxygen. Okay? And you spend under the sun for 8 hours. So this one I will say no photosynthesis. If no photosynthesis, there will be no food produced. If there's no food being produced, then there's no excess food to be stored as starch. Okay, my students, you can scold me because my handwriting is not very nice. Okay, that's why I read that to you. If there's no photosynthesis happening in leaf B, there will be no food produced in the leaf. If there's no food produced, there will be no excess food that can be stored as starch. And here you think about the iodine test. Iodine itself is pale yellow. So if there's no food, it will remain as pale yellow. If there's food, iodine plus starch, iodine plus starch, not food, plus starch, you will turn to blue-black. So leaf B, I expect it to be brown because no food. So this brown is the original color of the iodine. How about leaf A? Exposed to sun, Alright, there's carbon dioxide in the air surrounding it, there's water absorbed through the roots, there's light, there's chlorophyll. So leaf A, I expect it to make food, there'll be excess food that can be stored as starch. So leaf A will be blue-black here. You do not need to memorize this. If this needs to be used, it will be given to you. But it's good to know the origin color of iodine is about yellowish brown, and that will change to blue-black when starch is present. Answer is 3 for question 12. Question 13 now. Diagram below describes the process X taking place in plants. So what is taking in plant? What's happening in plant? It takes energy from the sun, produce two substances. This one releases oxygen and produce food, taking carbon dioxide, CO2, and water. Remember, this one is just like photosynthesis experiment. This is definitely photosynthesis. So process X is photosynthesis. Alright, and what substance A? Food. And food is not starch, food is sugar. Starch is the excess food. And gas B is oxygen. So if you've chosen 3 as the answer, you're confusing food with starch, which is not the same thing. So as you can see, this formula is tested very often in different ways. So you've got to memorize this and understand how this formula and the different parts of it work together. Last question before I take a break. The diagram shows the dispersal of seeds of plant R. And this is river. So if this is along this river bank, that tells you that this is dispersed, the seeds are dispersed by water. Parent plant R, right? So this is a very important key. It tells you the river direction. So water flows this way. Seed that drops into the water will be carried along by the river water, and it can be deposited along the river bank here. Not inland at all, but only along the river bank. Now, so wind direction does not affect it at all. So this one definitely is dispersed by water. Alright, this is a gift mark question. Very good. Teachers are nice to you. Question 14, answer is 2. Now here, please take a break and then we move on to the physical science question. Thanks for joining in. See you next time.